We are hopping over to John briefly. We're going to continue Matthew, but we're going to hop over to John for just one night. But before we do jump into that, I wanted to share a clip.
Donnie, what did Roberta Sparrow say to you?
She said that every living creature on Earth dies alone.
How did that make you feel?
It reminded me of my dog, Callie. She died when I was 8, and she crawled underneath the porch.
To die.
To be alone.
Do you feel alone right now?
I mean, I'd like to believe I'm not, but I've just never seen any proof, so I just don't debate it anymore, you know? It's like I could spend my whole life debating it over and over again, weighing the pros and cons, and in the end, I still wouldn't have any proof, so I just don't debate it anymore. It's absurd.
The search for God is absurd?
It is if everyone dies alone.
Does that scare you?
I don't want to be alone.
Who remembers that movie? Donnie Darko. Lane, is it still the background on your phone? It's been the background on your phone probably since the movie's been out. That came out in 2001. That's I did not remember it being that old. But I remember the first time I watched it, pretending like I knew what was happening for most of the movie. But there is this piercing scene, and I think this quote is something that's quoted a lot. A lot of people kind of resonate with this idea or this fear of dying alone and of being alone when you die. The quote at the beginning, everyone dies alone. And because of that, why worry about the search for God? Now, I'm not sure if he means like alone in the sense that when we die, we are alone, we're not surrounded by anybody, or perhaps that death in itself is alone. There's nothing after death. You just die and that's it. And because we can't really understand or comprehend any of this, why pursue knowing anything about God? Because at the end of the day, all we do is die, and that's it. And the main character there, he's obviously pretty perturbed by this. This is a depressing conclusion to reach, that you will just ultimately die alone. And I know this is quite a exciting way to kick off 2023 at CT. But that's the topic of discussion tonight, is what happens when you die? What happens after death? Is that it? Is this it? Is this life all there is? Will we all die alone? Is the search for God useless? And it's a hard thing to talk about. It's not exactly something that people are clamoring over to discuss at parties, talking about death. And I'm not going to lie, like it's something that I was, I guess, debating on how comfortable I was getting up here and talking about it. But it's something that's been on my mind quite a bit. And also it's just something that I recognize as I get older, how hard it is to talk about and how hard it is to address. And I'm 33, which is still young, dang it. But the reality is I'm getting older. And I remember pretty clearly the day that I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm getting older. And that's how it goes. No one expects to or plans to get older. No one's like, one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be older and I'm going to be A-okay with that. You just wake up and you look in the mirror and you're like, where did my hairline go? And why is what's left gray? And what's with all of these wrinkles? And it's uncomfortable. It's unsettling. And it's something that, as I get older, I see these physical effects of aging and it makes me uncomfortable. And sometimes it makes me depressed because it's a clear indicator of where my life is headed. It's a clear indicator of where all of our lives are headed. We're all headed towards death. And we try and cover it up. We try and make death look pretty, or maybe we try and make aging look pretty, but how often does that work out well? You see these like sad posts online of celebrities who are like trying to hide the fact that they're old now, and it inevitably backfires. They look worse than they did before, and it's impossible to age gracefully in Hollywood. Everyone has to cover up and make themselves look good. But here's a brutal statistic about death. 100% of people die. Where'd I get that set? Experience. Erwin Lutzer put it this way. He said, this isn't the land of the living. This is the land of the dying. And that's where we are today. We are living in the land of the dying. Is this depressing to talk about? Yes. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Does death suck? Of course. It's agonizing. It's miserable. But, and here's the most important question, are we hopeless in the face of death? No. We are not hopeless in the face of death. And we are hopping over to John just for today. And the cool thing about the book of John, and I know John's a popular book for people to go over in their discipleships. So when you read John, look for these I am statements by Christ. Throughout John, he makes these declarations of I am the bread. I am light. I am the good shepherd. And tonight, he says, I am the resurrection. So this unsolvable problem of death meets its match in Jesus Christ. And as painful as it is to talk about death, it's an important discussion because our view of what happens when we die has a major impact on how we live our lives here. If all there is this life, then that's it, right? Why not do what I can to make myself more comfortable? Why not try and ease the pain as much as I possibly can? Why not try and leave a mark? Because this life is it, so I'm going to throw all my chips in on this life. Yet if death is not final, if Jesus Christ is the resurrection, if we can spend eternity in heaven with him, then that changes the game plan here. That changes how we should live our lives. And of course, death is something that this fellowship is dealing with. It's something that's fresh on most of our minds. Keith passed away just a few months ago. And many of us, myself included, are still figuring how to mourn Keith's loss. And when we landed on teaching the raising of Lazarus, initially I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to teach that. But then I started to dig into it, and I was like, wait a minute. Keith just died. How can I talk about this? But then I realized that actually, that's the perfect thing to talk about. Because Keith lived his life completely secure and confident in where he was going. And that impacted the way he lived his life here. And that's something that as I get older, I also recognize I don't want to be burdened by my fears. I don't want to be burdened by the fear of death. I want to be freed here of the fear of death so that I can invest in the next life. And that's precisely what Keith did. So with that, I'm honored to teach John 11. So let's dive into it. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom loves you is ill. So there's this family, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. They're all brothers and sisters, and they live in Bethany. And Jesus knows this family. It adds this clarifying remark of this is Mary is the one who anointed the Lord with oil, which is also fascinating because that actually happens in a chapter after this. But regardless, there's this family that Jesus Christ knows and is familiar with, and he gets word that one of them, Lazarus, the one whom he loves, is ill. So what does he do? But when Jesus heard it, he said, the illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place that he was. How does this make sense? It says that he loves them. Jesus Christ loves Lazarus, and he is sick. So you know what I'm going to do? I am going to stay here. Where's the sense of urgency, Christ? Don't you love Lazarus? Like, look at all the other miracles he's performed up to this point. There's a sense of urgency, right? And Jesus is doing these big dramatic miracles, and he gets this word that Lazarus is dying. Why doesn't he lead this march to Lazarus and save him before he can die? Yet it says that Jesus loves him, and because he loved him, he stayed. And one thing we have to consider is by the time they got there, Lazarus would have been dead anyway. It was a 2 days journey from where they were at. When they got there, he had been dead 4 days. So maybe he could have gotten there like right before Lazarus died, but the odds are, even if he left right at this moment, by the time they got there, Lazarus would have been dead. But that's beside the point. He specifically says why he is waiting, so that the Son of God may be glorified. He has a plan here. And for the disciples, this would have been confusing for them. They're trying to understand what is it that Jesus Christ is doing here. It says that he's going to be glorified, but he loves Lazarus and he's not going. And he's teaching them a new perspective to have. And this is a new perspective that I think a lot of us, myself included, need to have in terms of how Jesus Christ works in our lives. And that's that delays are not denials. Delays are not denials. So often when I'm in pain or suffering, I'm calling out to the Lord, wondering where he is in this moment. Take care of this burden right now. Lord, I'm in financial need. Where's the help right now? Lord, I am mourning. Where is the comfort right now? And we expect these things right now. Lord, this is urgent. I need you. But Christ isn't here to meet our expectations. He's here to meet our needs. And so often, like with the case of Lazarus, maybe we don't understand it, but by meeting our needs, it leads to him being glorified. It reminds me so much of my toddler, right? He wakes up first thing in the morning, stumbles out of bed, rubbing his eyes, and marches into the living room and says, I want a snack and I want to watch Mickey Mouse Funhouse. It's like, dude, you literally just woke up. You are still like rubbing the sleep out of your eyes. Just pump the brakes a little bit. It's not a denial, but it's a delay. And it's also, do you trust me? I know what's best for you. We have other things in store that we have to take care of first. Anyway, moving on. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let's go to Judea again. The disciples said after him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. If you go back to the chapter before this in John 10, Jesus and the disciples were in Judea. And of course, Jesus did his thing, made some proclamations equating himself with God. You know, he's the Son of God. And of course, this riled people up, and they chased him out of town. They tried to stone him. So he left Judea, where they tried to kill him. And then he says here, let's go back to Judea. You know that place that we just left where they tried to hurl stones at me to kill me? Let's go back. And his disciples are like, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? That makes absolutely no sense. And then he delivers this promise, this albeit somewhat cryptic promise, but a beautiful promise, saying, if you walk with me, you'll be okay. You don't have to worry. You don't have to fear. Walk with me, walk in the light, and you'll be okay. Too often we make our decisions based on fear. The disciples wanted to make a decision based on fear. They were afraid of going back to Judea because they didn't want to get killed. They didn't want Jesus to get killed. So their decision would have been, hey man, I'm afraid of doing this. Let's stay back. Yeah, Jesus Christ says, if you're walking with me, you have nothing to fear. And he leads them back to Judea. After saying these things, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, if he's just taken a nap, he'll be okay. He'll recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. And for your sake, again, we see this is the plan that he has. For your sake, I am glad that I was not there so that you may believe. But let us go to him. I know you're afraid, but let's go. So then Thomas, the melodramatic, says, Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, well, let's go so that we can die with him. Melodramatic Thomas is remembered for two things: Thomas the doubter and this melodramatic statement here. Well, I guess if Jesus is going to go die in Judea, let's go with him. But Christ is using some purposefully confusing language here. He's saying that Lazarus is just sleeping. Now, if this is the case, just let them sleep. When my kids are sick, you know what I do? I let them sleep. They got to sleep it off. They'll be okay. They just need a couple hours extra rest, maybe an extra nap during the day, but this sickness will pass. Let them rest, and they'll wake up peachy keen. Just let Lazarus sleep this off, Jesus. But then Jesus clarifies, no. I'm not talking about just sleep. I'm not talking about a nap. I'm talking about death. And he's introducing this language where he is talking about death, but using the term sleep. And it's used in other parts of the New Testament. We see Christ use it a few times throughout the Gospels. In John, when Stephen is being martyred, as he dies, it says that he went to sleep. Paul uses it multiple times. He uses it quite a bit in 1 Corinthians. There's this, Paul uses it here in 1 Thess 4:14, 1 Thessalonians. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. If you believe in Jesus, that's what death is. Death is just like falling asleep. For a believer, death is just like falling asleep and waking up somewhere else. I love driving home with my kids at night. After a long day of adventuring, or maybe we just came from Mimi and Gaga's, which is Greg and Lena to all of you. And, they're partied out and they're tired and they fall asleep on the car on the way home, and you pull into the garage and it's past their bedtime. And you slowly open up the door and you pick them up and you're like trying to gently carry them to their bed and put them to sleep, but they inevitably wake up every single time, no matter how gentle and quiet you are. But at the same time, I always kind of want them to wake up, because they wake up and they look at you and they look around, they realize they're home, and then they just fall back into your arms. And it's just like, oh my God, the most heart-melting thing that you can experience with your kid. Just that level of like comfort and trust and security. They fell asleep and they woke up and they're somewhere else, but they're in their father's arms and they're home and they're safe and they're comfortable. That's what Jesus Christ is saying. That's what death is for the believer. You fall asleep and you wake up somewhere else and you're in your father's arms and you're home and you're safe and you're comfortable. Isn't that beautiful language? Isn't that a beautiful picture of what it looks like to know Jesus Christ and to pass through death? And that's what Jesus is promising here. That's what Jesus is promising. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary, to console them concerning their brother. This wasn't far from Jerusalem, so a bunch of people heard about Lazarus passing, so people flood out of Jerusalem and go to Mary and Martha and Mary's. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Funerals were a big deal back then. If someone died, you would have, there'd be music. People would be playing these dirges, these purposely sad songs, and everyone would flock from all over the place to mourn. You would hire professional mourners. Like, these were people who were like A+ at really turning on the waterworks and wailing. Like, you wanted these funerals to be a big deal. So there's this massive funeral for Lazarus and Jesus Christ approaching. And Martha hears. She comes out to meet Jesus Christ. She leaves this behind and she meets Jesus. And she has this exchange with him, which upon initial reading might sound kind of harsh. It might sound kind of accusatory, right? Like Martha is scolding Jesus for not being there. But I don't think that's the case, because first of all, she addresses him as Lord. And second, she's putting her trust in him, saying, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. But what we see here is that Martha is just filled with regret. She is filled with regret around the passing of Lazarus. She's mourning. She's suffering. And death has that effect on us. Death fills us with regrets. If only I had more time. If only I had this one more conversation. If only I had pursued them a little bit more. Or only, if I had canceled that plan so I can go have breakfast with them. That's what death does. It fills us with regrets. And I think that is proof that death is the enemy, because death robs us and it leaves us with regrets. But again, the point that Christ is making here is that for the believer, death isn't final. And he makes that promise next. Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. She has this eternal hope that she's kind of projecting and discussing when, Christ says he will rise again. And she has this, I know he will rise again. But what she fails to recognize at the moment, and what she hasn't realized yet, is that Jesus Christ was there to provide hope in that moment. And that he is capable of taking this tragic moment in Mary and Martha's life and using it for his glory. And he has this massive claim. If you believe in me, there is life after death. If you believe in me, you will spend eternity with your Creator in heaven. Period. That's it. I am the resurrection and the life. If you go out to your workplace or school or what have you, and you ask people, what happens when you die or where do you go when you die, I bet the number of people you ask that question, you will have the same amount of answers. Because everyone has their own answer to the question of what happens when you die, right? And a lot of it is, well, for me, death is this. Or for me, heaven is this. And they describe their own personal heaven or their own personal death and what that'll look like. Or you hear, it doesn't matter what you worship here because all roads, all religions lead to the same place. Yet, every religion has a different description of what heaven looks like and what happens after you die. Are you going to be reincarnated? Will you get 72 virgins? Are you just going to dissolve into the collective consciousness? Or is nothing going to happen? Are you just going to decay into the ground? There's all these different answers about what death is. And Jesus Christ says that there is one resurrection. There's one eternity, one way to heaven, and that is through him. The victory over death belongs to one person and one person alone, and that is Jesus Christ. When he said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here and calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Again, remember, these were big deals. Everyone is flocking to this funeral, and they want to go with Mary to weep at the tomb. So now Mary has this crowd with her, and now Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, and she fell at his feet, saying, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. Similar reaction to Martha, filled with regret over her brother's death. Jesus, if only he had been there. Lord, if only you had been there, he wouldn't have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? They said, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Deeply moved. That's a pretty weak translation, deeply moved. The Greek word here is used to describe like a horse that is snorting in anger. I think this is a little weak. In other words, Jesus was so angered that he had this like visceral gut reaction to death. And it says he weeps. He wept with these people. God is not indifferent towards death. Death makes God angry. Death makes God weep. And this is a beautiful picture here because he enters their suffering with them. He weeps with them. And he weeps because he knows that this isn't right. And this isn't just a strictly rational response by Christ. He knows what's going to happen. He knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. The logical response would not be to weep here because he knows that Lazarus is, in a couple moments, he's going to be alive again. Yet here he is, angry and weeping because death is the enemy and death stings and death robs us. Yet here he is weeping. I'm so glad that we have this passage because I tend to think of God as someone who is strictly rational and that's it, right? He's got a job to do and he does it. There's no personality to God. There's no sensitivity to him. Yet here we have a beautiful, compassionate picture of who Jesus Christ is. He's not detached and distant. He is compassionate. He enters into their sufferings. And I think there's two things that we can learn from this. One is to enter into the suffering of those around us who are mourning. This is particularly a challenge for me. If someone is talking about their sufferings, I try to one-up it, make my suffering seem a little bit worse than theirs. That sucks, man. I'm sorry for that. But wait till you hear this. We compare or we avoid it. Someone we know is going through something, so we kind of keep arm's length because we don't want to enter into their suffering. And this is beautiful because Jesus Christ in this moment, he doesn't jump straight into a lecture. He doesn't jump straight into a teaching. He doesn't even jump straight into raising Lazarus from the dead. He takes a moment to be angry and to weep with them. He takes a moment to enter into their sufferings. This also tells us that we should invite Christ into our pain. He wants to weep with you. You're going through something hard. You want to weep over it. You want to beat your breast over it. You're angry about it. Let Jesus Christ enter into that suffering with you. Let him enter into that pain with you. I tend to only reveal my brokenheartedness or my pain to the closest people in my circle, right? These are the people that I open up about and talk about when I'm suffering. Jesus Christ wants to draw close to you. He wants to hear what you're going through. He wants to weep with you. He wants you to draw close to him so that he can draw close to you and comfort you. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days." The KJV here says, and I think we should keep this one, "Lord, by this time he stinketh." Which I think I'm going to use that next time Audie asks me to change Ari's diaper. Audie, but it stinketh. And I guarantee you it smelled. A couple of years ago, over the summer, I went on a retreat, and me and some friends prepared a bunch of pulled pork ahead of time to take the retreat. And before we left for the weekend, I took all the scraps and the trimmings and just threw it in the trash bin in my garage that was baking at a ripe 110. And then I came home after 3-day weekend, and it was absolutely putrid. It burned your eyebrows off. And I guarantee you that paled in comparison to what they would have potentially been smelling. Lord Jesus, what are you thinking? It has been 4 days. You have to be absolutely insane to roll that stone away. But they do it. Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." I love that. I thank you that you have already heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. This is for your glory. You are raising this man for your glory. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out. The man who had died 4 days ago came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. So he does it. What he set out to do, raise Lazarus from the dead. And he does it. It's been 4 days, yet here Lazarus is walking out of that tomb, proving that Christ has the ultimate authority over death. And this is foreshadowing two things. One is Christ's resurrection. Christ is going to die, and 3 days later, he's going to raise from the dead. Again, proving and solidifying that he has the authority over death. And two, our resurrection. And so, in some ways, I kind of feel bad for Lazarus. He had an awesome story to tell, and I bet you no one could threaten Lazarus with anything at this point in time, because what are you going to do, kill him? Been there. But he did have to die twice. And there will be a final, true resurrection. Some people call this the resuscitation of Lazarus because he wasn't truly dead. And the true resurrection will happen at a later date. And it will. There will be a true resurrection where believers will be given new bodies. You will experience eternity in heaven with Christ. There will be no more pain, no more death, no more suffering, no more tears, no more regrets, no more missed opportunities. That's what we have to look forward to. No, there is no need in Christ to fear death. Hebrews 2:14 and 15 talks about this. Through death, Jesus Christ might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who, through fear of death, were subject to lifelong slavery. The fear of death enslaves us. Satan uses the fear of death to enslave us, to distract us, to make us not think about what is waiting for us in eternity. It forces us to focus on the here and now. I have to make sure that I'm safe and comfortable here. That's what death does. The fear of death makes us worry only about the here and now in this life. And before knowing Christ, Jesus Christ, I was certainly struggling with the fear of death. It wasn't something that I was actively struggling with, but the summer that I was coming around happened to be one of those summers where there was a prediction that the world was going to end. And I don't think I truly believed the world was going to end, but I was young at the time. I was like in my early 20s. Death was not on my mind. Yet here's this weird freak event that may or may not happen, that if it did, would result in my death. And I thought up at that point that I would be okay, that life after death, that I would be in heaven. But I thought that because I actually never really truly thought about it. But here I am thinking about death, and I realize I am not confident. I cannot guarantee where I'm going to go. I had absolutely zero certainty of what was going to happen to me after I die. And then thankfully I started coming around to Freedom Fellowships. I came around to home churches, heard the gospel, came into a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that fear of death subsided. And it was fascinating. And I didn't put this together until literally today. A couple months after I got saved, I was walking along Kent campus, and they always have those dudes who try and pin you down and talk about death and whatnot. And I got pinned by this guy this one day, and he's asking me, where are you going to go when you die? And I said, I'm going to heaven. He said, how confident are you in that, though? I said, 100%. He said, okay, but how are you so confident? I was like, I trust in Jesus Christ. I trust my life to Jesus Christ. And it's wild thinking back on that now, the difference, right? Completely uncertain about where I'm headed, insecure about my future, to absolutely certain. Jesus Christ has conquered death, and I know that I will rise with him. I know that I will spend eternity with him. But I do have to admit, when I became a parent, this fear of death started to creep back in, right? Because now I have something to live for. And as a parent with little kids, you start to think about death. And you start to think about, the family that you would potentially leave behind. And it's freaky. And it produces anxiety. And it makes you shift your focus, right? Now I'm worried about establishing something here. Now I'm worried about, is my money in the right place? Is this house sufficient? Is my job good enough? Should I pursue a better job? Do I need to make more money now while I can? And that's what death does. That's what the fear of death does. It distracts us from what really matters. And we have to consciously, even as believers, choose to rest in the promise of the resurrection. Choose to rest in the fact that Jesus Christ has conquered death. If we have come into a relationship with Christ, why are we worrying about death? He is the resurrection. If you don't know Jesus Christ, if you're here and you're visiting, he wants to give you security on this issue. When you walk out of here tonight and you think about your death, how confident are you in where you're going? And this isn't a scare tactic, but death is something that we hate to think about. Death is something that we don't want to talk about. Yet when we think about it, we realize our deficiencies. We realize we don't know where we're going. When you leave here tonight, how confident are you in where you're going? As I said, I was in a point where I wasn't confident. Yet Jesus Christ doesn't want us to remain unconfident. He gives us hope. We can trust in the absolute certainty of his resurrection, of his conquering over death. We don't have to be left in the dark. We don't have to face our future without hope. We don't have to be in fear. We don't have to mourn like we don't know where we're going. And it all starts with knowing who Jesus Christ is. It all starts with coming into a relationship with him. When he died for you. He died for me. He died for each and every one of us. On the cross, he paved the way for you to know the Lord, to know him, to come into a relationship with your Creator. The debt that we all owe was paid for at the cross. And then 3 days later, he rose from the dead. He conquered death for us. And you can conquer death alongside him. All you have to do is ask to be in a relationship. If you do know Jesus Christ, then we have to constantly rest in this and recognize how beautiful it is that we are in a relationship with the one who has defeated death, the one who has destroyed the last enemy. That puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Knowing that you are going to spend eternity in heaven. Doesn't that change the way that you live your life now? Doesn't that change the things that you choose to invest in now? If there is something more significant and eternal coming, if we believe this, we will invest in the things that carry over into eternity. If I believe in an eternal heaven with Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for my sins, can I endure some temporary discomfort in this life to invest in somebody? Yeah. Can I sacrifice a little bit of money to help support a village in India to spread the gospel? Can I get behind God's plan in other places? Can I sacrifice a week of vacation time to go to Johnny and Friends? Of course I can. Because these are things that are investing in the eternal. These are the things that we will take with us, these relationships, these people. The resurrection is coming. But as believers, we have to ask ourselves, are we living with eternity in our hearts? Are we thinking with God's perspective? God is saying, I have removed the fear of death from you. I have freed you up to invest in what matters. And I constantly have to ask myself, am I going to invest in my comfort or am I going to invest in people? And I love this conversation here, this question. Jesus Christ has settled the issue of death. Do you believe it? Not just acknowledge it, not just understand it, but do you believe it? Do you believe it? That's the question for us here tonight. Do you believe it? And with that, I'll pray, and then we can do some questions and comments. Lord, thank you that you have conquered death. That is admittedly something that I have struggled with multiple times in my life, whether it being a loved one passing or just having these weird fears over future deaths of myself, of those around me, and how I dread those days. But you have conquered death, Lord. You have given us an opportunity to know you. I thank you for this picture tonight, Lord, of a resurrection life. Lord, I pray that we as believers can take that to heart, that we can rest in that resurrection, that we can let that transform the way that we invest our time and our comforts or invest in our time and not just our comforts, but in other people and in our securities, but we can invest wisely, Lord. I do thank you for Keith. He was a beautiful picture of what it looks like to rest in confidence on where he's going and use his opportunity here to invest in eternity, to invest in people, to shepherd your flock, Lord. You have put people in our lives that you want us to minister to. Help us to see those people. Help us to rest in that here in 2023 and as we move forward. Help us to just be a blessing to those around us. And Lord, I want to pray for the people here who don't know you. You want to give them life. You offer life. You offer resurrection. You offer significance. You offer security. Lord, I pray that we can just all be considering those things. As hard it is to think about, Lord, help us to think about death and what that means and where we're going. Lord, I pray that, albeit this is a heavy topic tonight, that we can spend the rest of the night rejoicing over what you have done and what you have accomplished. It really is a beautiful story here tonight, the raising of Lazarus. Such a tremendous account to study and to talk about with these guys. I thank you, Lord, that we don't have to fear death. Amen. Thank you. Here's another crappy thing about aging they don't tell you. Your eyes. I've always had 20/20 vision. I gotta wear glasses now. I actually brought them up because I was like, I don't want people to see me wearing glasses. But then I was like, what would happen if I got up there and I couldn't read my notes? So I brought them up. But yeah, that's something you don't expect. One day, you might need glasses. Seth. Put them on. Do I look smarter now? Hey, Seth.
Hello. So, if you wouldn't shush so much, it'd be a lot quieter. But I don't know. The topic of death always reminds me of some papers and other like articles that I've read about near-death experiences.
Yeah.
Or, people that actually died and were brought back to life. And just how they vary. You have, now, probably not everyone talks about, what happens, but and a lot of these papers are, it's secular research. And there are people who have like these horrifying, hellish experiences, and then there are people that have much more peaceful ones. It gets strange with children, but I won't go into that. But I always found that interesting. Just it never goes too far into it. It never talks about the beliefs, at least the papers I read, but I always just found that interesting.
Yeah. Lee Strobel, I think, writes about NDEs, near-death experiences, and it might be the case for heaven. I haven't checked it out, but I know Kyle and Adam went on this search of NDE information, and they found some pretty fascinating stuff from the secular and from the Christian perspective. So let me look up on that. But I think, I think Lee Strobel talks about that in The Case for Heaven.
There's also John Burke. There's a book called Imagine Heaven. It's really good.
Really? Okay. Imagine Heaven.
It's just one of those things I just got reminded of.
Yeah,
I don't have much else to share.
That's thanks for bringing
just
that up.
talking about
it is,
what happens when we die.
Yeah.
So
Thanks. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Ian. I mean, it's better than leaning down. So, my uncle died last year, and it was very sad. And one of his favorite bands has a song, and it goes like this. Well, I loved my aunt, but she died. And my Uncle Lou, then he died. I'm searching for something which can't be found, but I'm hoping. I still dream of Dad, though he died. Everything dies. And it was weird that that song brought me comfort through my uncle's death. But without God, that singer at that time of that band did not believe in God at all. Fortunately, before he died, which everything does die, he came to know Jesus, which is
Wow.
pretty rad. But those who don't have God don't have hope because everything, everyone, like you quoted your statistic, 100% of people die. And I don't know how prominent this is, but there's something of a movement to have, for people who have died, to have celebrations of life instead of funerals.
Mm-hmm.
And I get why. It's hard to feel sad. We don't want to focus on the death. We don't want to think about the death. As we saw tonight, there's lots of crying and weeping and negative feelings associated with that. But I do think that there's something we miss if there's that. Let me rephrase that because that was a terrible sentence. There's something we miss if we don't think about death. We don't want to, but there's something we miss because it is real. Death should make us sad. Death is wrong. And it's ignorant and unreal to try to plaster over that wrongness.
Yeah.
Even the temporary separation that we as believers will experience from other believers who have died. And when someone dies, I think we ought to be able to do three things at the same, well, maybe not the same time. That'd be pretty complicated. Three things related to a person dying. Look back at their life and remember them, because celebrating that life is important. Second, mourn the loss. Admit the separation is evil, that death is evil. Really reckon with that. And then third, look forward to the hope that if they were a believer in Jesus, we'll see them again.
Yeah.
And then if even we're not sure if they were a believer, God knew them from the moment they were conceived, before they were born, and had way more time with them than we did. So we can hope that he reached them in some way we don't understand.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for sharing that. It is, I mean, going back to Jesus being angry and weeping, it is fascinating. He doesn't plaster over death. He doesn't make it look palatable. He recognizes that there's suffering, there's pain in death. I wonder, too, if that band, that guy, if his ruminations over death led him to investigate Christ at all. Anyway, Carlel.
Greetings. Hey, have you had those glasses on the whole time?
No, someone yelled at me, told me to put them on after.
Oh, okay. I was in the back. You can't see them from the back. It's like
Really?
because of the clear lens. You can't really see them from the back.
Yeah.
Anyways, they look good. New year, new you.
Yeah. New year, older me.
So I got an online question. Also, my mom's going to come up and ask a question too. I think she said she had a question, so she's going to come up after me.
All right, Mom.
So this first question from me, not my mom, is so were Jesus and Lazarus the only people in the Bible to have been resurrected? This question was for Ian. This question was for Ian.
That's what, like 1 Kings 17? Elijah's staying at this woman's house, and her son dies, and Elijah stretches out 3 times, and he raises back from the dead. There's also the Eutychus who fell out of the window during Paul's sleeping, or during Paul's teaching. He fell asleep during Paul's teaching, and he fell out of the window and died, and they raised him back from the dead. I think there's probably a few other instances. Jairus' daughter, yeah. That's also a fascinating, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I meant to bring it up. That's another fascinating aspect of Jesus and Lazarus, is he healed Jairus' daughter from afar. He could have healed Lazarus from afar, but he didn't. He waited 2 days, and then he traveled the 2 days. So.
Okay, I'll let my mom up next.
All right, Mom. Yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. You don't have to. Okay.
You know, for me, you can see him. I mean, so you can see my story. But it was not really a question about like what I want to say for myself. Like, I mean, it's just like you know how people commit suicide, and you know, like you said, I mean, God gives us life; He gives and take away. We are not
Mhm.
supposed to, because that's His
Yeah.
choice. Do they? Will they have a chance? I mean,
People commit suicide?
I believe they don't, but
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's something that's been debated for a while. And I think that certain denominations, and I think the Catholics believe that they don't. I would put my trust in Jesus Christ and his judgment. I do think there are people that are in a relationship, were in a relationship with Christ, and then committed suicide. And I would trust that they're in heaven. The Bible talks a lot about how unconditional salvation is. If you come into a relationship with Jesus Christ, there's nothing, neither height nor depth nor death can separate you from Christ. So I would put my faith in their decision as to whether or not they've accepted Christ, and I would also put my faith in God's judgment. If that makes sense. Hi.
Hi. I wanted to point out a parallel that I had actually just came across today
Okay, yeah.
earlier. That backing off of Carl's question that he had read out as well, is that in Matthew 9, there's an entire instance in which Jesus raises a dead girl, and there's a synagogue leader. He approaches Jesus and he asks him to heal his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and he says in Matthew 9:24, he says there's a whole crowd. They're being noisy. They're being a crowd.
Rambunctious.
He says, "Go away. The girl is not dead, but asleep." And they
Yeah.
laughed at him.
Yeah.
But I found out that'd be a pretty intriguing parallel based
Mhm.
off of tonight's teaching, as well as the question that Carlo wrote out.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how Christ uses this language specifically. And you can tell he does it for a reason, this language of sleeping. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right, cool. Well, that's all we had. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you again.